Waiting. Okay, let's see. Okay, hello.
Hello?
Hello, can people hear?
Yes.
If possible, would you like me to rename you? Okay, notice that down in the lower left is your name. You can right click and then go down to rename and put your full name in there. Okay. See who else? George and Martha.
Martha? Mm-hmm.
Who is that?
Right here.
Yes. George and Martha
Grover.
Grover. Okay, hello.
Grover. Neighbors of Beverly.
Oh, terrific. Welcome. Montclarians. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And who is SS? SS is connecting to audio. Okay. See, there's Marion. Okay, Angela Carroll is coming in. Marion, you are muted. I just oh. I can't seem to unmute you, Marion.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay, good.
Hi, Brigitte.
Okay.
Who else is there? Janelle and George and
Martha.
No, it's just Martha.
Okay, then I will
Martha.
rename you.
Okay.
Rename, just Martha. And
Right.
Martha, how do you spell your last name?
Grover.
Grover. Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. What else do we?
Brigitte, how are you doing?
You're muted, Brigitte.
There we go. Right? You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm fine, Marion. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Does anyone know how to, sorry. I have 9 people on my screen. Well, I have 9 squares. Does anybody know how I'm on an iPad? I've never gotten more than 9. Does anybody know how to get more?
That's all we have right now. We have 10 actually, 10 squares, not video for everybody.
Right. Well, I won't be able to see them all at once. So
Yeah.
we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah. Hi, Peggy.
Hi, Peggy.
You're muted. So if you want to unmute yourself. Way over on the left, lower left.
There it is.
We got it.
Okay, good.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling fine, actually. 2 weeks from surgery and I'm doing great.
Wow, you're amazing.
No, it wasn't that complex a surgery. Yeah.
What's next?
They put you
had
to-
enough.
They put you to sleep that and you survived that, so
Yes, yes. But
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
have to spend the night or anything.
that's amazing.
Sent me home with Harry. Okay, Valerie's coming in.
Oh,
Hello, Valerie.
Oh,
Hi, Valerie.
Hey gang, how are you?
hi, hi, Val. We just were chatting.
Lottery, Nova, whatever, Flora, Virginia ticket.
Raffle.
Yes, Valerie is selling Flora, Virginia raffle tickets last minute because we're going to have the drawing tonight. Do we want to have it at the end of the meeting, Valerie?
Up to you,
forgot.
Nancy. I defer to the president.
Oh,
I forgot to send in my money.
You know
well,
what?
you
I
can
need
still
a
make out with
bigger-
Valerie if you want.
Huh?
You can make out with Valerie right now.
You know what I
Write
need
up a
to
ticket
do?
for
I
you
need
and
to go
bill you.
find a bigger container so that they can get all shuffled around.
I forgot to send you money.
Are you good for it, Peggy?
I am. I
We got a lot
am.
of witnesses.
I am. How many tickets you want to sell me?
How many you want to buy?
I forgot. How much are they?
6 for $5.
Yeah, they're very cheap.
Oh, okay. I'll buy 10. 12.
$10 worth, right?
And
Yes.
12 tickets.
Yes.
If we ever do this again, people need to send me return address labels. This is like,
Yeah. Filling out addresses, yeah.
Well, I would just put Peggy's name on that. How many other Peggy's are you going to have, right? If it's in your handwriting, you could read it.
there's only one Peggy Martin in the whole world.
Actually, I have another internet friend named Peggy Martin.
Yeah, I can tell you that's not true.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I know. And the gynecologist I used to go to, she had somebody else, same name.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, here we go. I'm signing you up.
Thank you.
But I gotta go find a bigger container because they're not mixing well here.
Big basket or bowl or something.
Yeah. Oh, we got lots of that around here somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, my. Now we've got a man coming in.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Hi, Harry.
Hey, Harry.
Here's Harry. We want Harry.
Say something, Harry, so
Quite
you'll
a group
show up.
there, huh? Holy smokes, all these women.
There he is.
You're
love it.
I love it.
It's not in person.
You're a great nurse, Harry. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
ma'am.
taking good care of Nancy.
Yeah, she's,
I beg to differ.
what was that?
Oh, nothing.
You're a good nurse, Harry. You took
Hey,
good care of Nancy. Thank
Listen to
you.
her. Listen to her. She knows what she's talking about.
Yes.
Harry, did you pay her?
Yeah,
Nancy, you just took the words out of my mouth.
Why?
Nothing. I miss you.
I miss you too, sweetheart.
I just blew you a kiss.
I know, I felt it. Boom. Got me right there on the forehead.
Okay. Well, this is our social part of the meeting.
Yeah. I'm
What's
gonna have- I'm gonna have a
Pretend
little-
that you're getting refreshments and, you know, networking, all that good stuff.
Harrison,
What?
I sent you an email. The latest news today came out, and maybe you've already heard it, that in Canada, scientists are finding that the white-throated sparrow has changed its song.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't see that, Harry?
You know what today is? Today is Canada Day.
Really?
Oh, yeah,
No,
really?
that was
That was
yesterday.
earlier.
Yesterday was, yep.
You're losing
Oh,
track of time.
I was in my room and I played this song of the white-throated sparrow, the normal one. Well, my daughter came down a little while later and she said, "Did I hear something right? Did I hear a white-throated sparrow?" Because she knows that they're not. And I said, "No, I'm sorry I played it." She said it's her favorite, one of her favorite bird songs.
Mm.
It's rather mournful.
Yeah.
Huh.
Anyway,
Oh, that's nice.
thought
I
I'd
didn't
throw
know.
that in.
Was that a feature in the Canadian House of Parliament or something like that we had to change the song?
Oh, no.
It was a
No, the bird has decided to sing a different tune and it's catching on.
Peggy, here's
the
your
other birds.
tickets.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome. And now I gotta go find a big container. I'll be back.
Okay.
Me too.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Marion. How are you?
Doing fine.
Good.
I had a neurologist appointment today. I've been having dizziness and balance problems all year, and he at least ruled out Parkinson's disease that
Oh,
runs
good.
in my family.
Oh, really?
So I'm getting
That's
an
good.
MRI of my head next week. I had one last week. I'm having all these tests.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
just a dizzy blonde. If I just give up on Miss Clairol, I'd be fine. Oh,
They
golly.
don't find anything. So,
Oh, Valerie's doing it right.
Did you find your keg
I found my what?
container? Your keg, I was joking.
Oh, my salad spinner.
Oh, okay. That's
Oh,
good.
perfect.
is she drawing? I didn't know we were going to do this here. I guess we don't know what we're doing in 2 months, so.
Garage to go right now.
You don't want to listen. You don't want to listen to Julie's talk.
What'd you say?
I muted you for a moment, Peggy.
Yeah. And when we're all listening to the program, I have a personal request that everybody mute themselves. We can hear people eating and drinking and talking and, you know, everything.
Karen, I'll be doing that as the host. I'll be
Right,
I'll be
right.
muting everyone.
Great, because I just have been in enough that it's very, you know, you just are
It's distracting and annoying.
distracting. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word.
I don't know if that's the word, but
Well,
okay, we got
do.
Claudia coming in and somebody who's iPad 5. And I don't know who SS is.
Susan somebody?
Excuse me?
Susan somebody? I'm trying to think, go down the list mentally.
I don't know. There used to be a Susie Sasoulis, but she got married and she's no longer Sasoulis.
Baby now, you said. So is Valerie
iPad 5.
what?
Say what?
I just wondered who iPad 5 is.
They're just now connecting to their audio, so give them a minute. Maybe they'll
Yeah.
respond.
Well, that's been the same way with SS. It's been connecting to audio for several minutes now.
Huh,
And same thing with Angela Carroll. I don't know if there's an issue there or something.
yeah. Well, Valerie, my cat was sick, and Mary, and I know they like cats, And Nancy likes cats.
And I like cats.
Okay.
I like cats.
Marion does. Yeah, Inky.
I used to be the cat lady.
My cat was very sick Saturday, so I called the vet, and she was constipated, dehydrated, and had an infection. And he didn't know where the infection was, but she got better in 2 days and now is back to normal. So
Oh, fantastic.
Good.
lots of medicine.
Enjoy, dear.
But he said to watch her for 2 weeks because the medicine was good for 2 weeks, the antibiotic, but he said if it's something we didn't cure, then it could be coming back. So he didn't do any more tests to find out where the infection came from, but he's guessing kidney type of thing, urinary tract.
Yeah.
She's an older lady, so maybe so. I don't know. She's 15.
Wow, good for her.
Yeah. And she's never been sick before, so
Ours is 15 too, and I don't think he's ever been sick.
really, he's healthy.
No.
Good.
Our cat Inky is 18
Wow.
and as ornery as ever. We love it.
Yes.
Keeping our fingers crossed.
Did
Yeah.
anybody see the Alonzo Abogadis posting on Capital Naturalist about outdoor cats in the last couple days?
No.
He goes on and on about it. Everybody goes on about that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it struck me as particularly interesting because I just wrote an article for the Virginia Bluebird Society newsletter about the case for indoor cats. And, you know, everybody knows how I am about my cats.
Yeah.
And, keep them in and they live longer.
Yeah.
Amen. We've kept Inky in since a kitten. And yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've
mine
kept
goes
ours
out
in
on
him
the
forever.
desk with me.
Say what, Brigitte?
We've kept ours in forever now. You know, forever. We've had cats over the years and they're indoors.
And Brigitte lost a kitty recently,
Who?
one of her
He
Persians.
was, yeah, he was 15,
Oh,
a pure Persian, so.
wow. Do they talk
Yeah.
a lot? Do they meow a lot?
Not like a Siamese cat. They'll talk to
Oh,
you, but they won't just,
That's,
yeah, they don't just go on and on like a Siamese can
yeah,
do.
I had a across the hall neighbor that had Siamese cats. Man, they
Yeah.
talked all the time. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I know.
It's Siamese, yeah.
Mm.
Huh.
Nancy, this is Marion. Should I wait until later to talk about
Yes,
the Zoom meeting? Okay.
I would wait until we have everybody online, because
Sure.
otherwise you'd have to
Yes.
repeat it.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay, Claudia, yay for indoor cats. Okay.
I just read in the course of doing research for the article that I wrote for the newsletter, I read a book called Cat Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're not a person who firmly believes in cats should be indoors, if you read this book, not just about in terms of how many birds they kill, but the diseases that they can bring back into your house is just terrifying.
Hmm.
Scare
So,
people.
That
should scare people.
It should, it absolutely, but you know,
Yeah.
I guess probably people who let their cats run wild are not going to read a book called Cat Wars.
My daughter lets her cat run wild and it crosses the street and everything. Oh, I hate that. It got hit one time and they paid, over $1,000 for broken bone somewhere, a hip or something. Oh, it's just ridiculous.
In the course of the research for this article, I discussed Washington, D.C., the #1 killer of cats in Washington, D.C. Cars.
Cars.
Really? Oh.
I thought it was Republicans.
No politics here, Harrison.
Yeah, we don't know what everybody is.
What's in that mason jar, Harry?
Iced tea.
Okay, just check it.
Now wait, you're in 2 different rooms, guys. How do you know what's in this mason jar?
I can see him from where I am. He's on a slightly lower level, just 3 steps down the end. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I
Yeah,
made that iced tea.
right. Can you hear me on this?
Oh,
Yeah.
Julie is coming in, our speaker. Okay. We still don't know who iPad 5 is. Would iPad 5 please identify yourself? Unmute and tell us who you are, or rename.
You know, I tuned in at first with my phone and
Yes.
realized that I don't have it set up properly, so I switched to my iPad. I don't suppose it's my iPhone. Trying to,
I don't know.
can't remember. I'm just gonna check.
Okay, we got some more people in the waiting room. David Sarr and somebody named Nancy's iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, so it's not this Nancy.
Yeah, no, I'm off, I think.
Okay, Kathy Hindman is coming.
Oh, I should know who's on the list.
Yes, you should. That's why I'm trying to get people to identify themselves.
Okay, let me get my book.
Karen is our secretary and will be taking attendance.
It's underneath my props. Wait a minute, I gotta move here. There. Okay, I gotta, these books are big enough, aren't they? They hold up my laptop. I had it all set up. It was underneath there. Okay.
Well, some of you aren't letting us see you. We know you're hiding behind your names. That's okay. Okay, Claudia recommends this excellent book. Let's see. Highly recommend it. Peter Mara, author. Is that the one that you read, Valerie?
I
Yes.
believe it is, yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's have a roll call. Nancy, can we?
Well, not yet. It's not 7:30 yet.
Well, I just meant of who's here now.
Okay, well, I don't know who JLM is.
Well, I'll
Okay,
just-
S says, I don't have a camera or microphone. Who is S? SS. You can just say who you are in the chat box, and I can, oh, Sylvia Sloan, thank you. So I will change that. And Brian McDougall has joined us. Let's see.
Brian?
Name.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I hope I spelled that right. Sylvia Sloan. Somebody else has
Sylvia
joined
Sloan.
us. And Brian McDougall's out camping. Yes, okay.
So there's no E on the end of Sloan?
She said it's okay, so no E.
Okay.
Janine Lawton is entered. Okay. You're getting a good audience here, Julie. Okay, David Singman and Muriel don't have a microphone or camera, so just listen. Okay, so I will rename you, David. Okay. George and Martha have come back. I think they were here and then they left us. Okay. Who is Nancy's iPhone? You unmute yourself and tell us who you are. Not Nancy Herwig or someone. Or use the chat. Let me see. Maybe there's more in the chat. Oh, JLM is Nick and Jocelyn Malloy. Okay. Okay, let's see.
Boy, M-A-L-L.
It's gonna change here as it gets dark.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, okay.
iPad 5. Who? WATSD.
Doris Watson, Lake Ridge, Garden Club of Lake Ridge.
Doris?
Yes.
Your name? Okay. Let
Yes.
me rename you so we have your full name.
Okay.
Watson, W-A-T-S-O-N, I hope.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Yes,
thank
that's
you.
correct.
Okay. Patricia Slaughter's entering. Oh, we're getting a good crowd.
Nancy, I just called Nancy Herwig, and Nancy's iPad is not Nancy Herwig.
Okay. Or iPhone.
Or iPhone, yeah.
Okay. So I don't know who that is. I have no iPhone. Okay. Joyce Andrew just came on. We've gone to 2 pages now for me. Kim Hosen is coming in. Okay. Hi, Kim.
Oh,
Hi, Nancy.
Okay.
hi, Kim.
Hey, how's everybody? It's
Good.
I'm fine.
nice to see you.
Yeah. Paul Kelly is a new face to me. Hello, Paul. Most of you are muted. Let's see, some more people in the waiting room. Ingrid Davis Collado, Debbie Wagaman. Okay.
Okay, Debbie.
We're now up to 30 participants.
Wow.
Ingrid, what was Ingrid's last name?
Let me see. Davis, let's see. Davis hyphen Colato, C-O-L-A-T-O. Our secretary is taking attendance here.
Hello,
Hello, hello.
Patricia Slaughter.
In Beverly Houston?
Beverly Houston's here, but she can't,
We're on the same site.
Okay, you're together. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
because Beverly can't log in.
Oh,
So we're here together.
Is that okay?
so where are you together, Patricia Slaughter
With
and Beverly?
Patricia Slaughter, yeah.
Okay.
I need to sit up higher.
Let's.
What was your question?
I didn't have one. I
Okay.
was just
Pull over a chair for
naming.
you. You're gonna have to
It's okay.
sit with me.
Oh, I'm gonna stand. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not gonna stand. I'm gonna pull this chair over.
I don't know why I can get this far, but and I can see it all, and I can see myself. You want me to get a kitchen?
Okay. Just have a couple minutes now. as people-
What was Debbie's name? Debbie,
Wagaman,
how do you spell it?
is she muted?
I don't know.
W-A-G-G-A-M. Where is she?
Arlene Stewart's come in. We're coming in.
W-A-G-A-M-A-N.
W-A-G-A-M-A-N?
Yes.
Okay.
And Arlene, what now? I missed the last.
Stewart.
Oh, that's right. I started that. Stewart.
Okay.
W-A-R-T.
The official list is 31 participants, but we have 2 people sharing one screen, so that makes us 32. Oh, and Angela Carroll is sharing a screen with her husband, I guess.
She's sharing with Larry. Oh.
Somebody needs to mute.
I'm sharing with Larry Lahowitz.
Hello, Angela.
Hi.
Larry.
Hey, look, Patty.
Beverly.
Okay, Debbie Wagaman says, I don't have a mic or a microphone, or a camera. Okay.
Looks good to me.
Somebody's making weird noises.
How would
Okay.
How would some are frozen.
Janice has just come.
Okay.
Who's frozen?
No, now we're okay.
Somebody else has said something. Let's see. All right. Looks like we're on track. Share music has entered. My, oh my. Charlie Grimes is entering. Hello, Charlie.
Well, I don't have everybody, but
Okay. Jean Jabara, I thought she was already on here. Maybe she left and has come back.
what's the name?
Jean Jabara is a member.
How do you spell the first?
Jeanne.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Jean with 2 N's and an E.
Is that
Just
the
like
first
me.
name?
She's right down. You
Oh.
can see her on the screen. She has her
I
name.
can't. I only see 4 up top.
Well, why don't you do full screen?
How do I do that?
Go up to
Oh.
the top
Where? Yeah.
and there should be something that says,
Well, there's a little box for square. Oh, yeah.
okay,
Now everybody's gone except you. That was the full. Oh, exit full screen. All right, I'm going to do that.
okay.
Because
Kim has noted that I can download a list of participants after the meeting is over, so I will do that.
Okay, good.
But that is as long as I can get people identified rather than just saying that they're iPad number 5 or something. Okay, yeah. I think iPad for number 5 is one we don't have identified. I also have DM0117, a gentleman with a headset on. What if you could rename yourself, or I'll rename you? Because you're muted right now, so we can't hear you.
Can you unmute him?
I can't seem to unmute. Okay,
Got it.
there he is. And your name?
My name is David Means. I'm a urban forester. I know Julie well.
Okay.
And I'm interested in what she has to say.
Well, I want to rename you so you are David. How do you spell your last name?
Means.
Means. Okay, gotcha. So
Okay,
you'll show
David.
up. He is identified now. Okay, someone else has joined us. Reka. Yes. We're getting a good group here.
Hey, Nancy, it's Tim Kiley. I'm using my son's computer.
Okay, so we need to,
It just, instead of Paul, it's just Tim Kiley.
Tim, okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I started looking at everybody's pictures.
And you said, wait a minute, that's not me.
That's not me. Yeah, mine crashed yesterday. I got to get it
Okay.
fixed. He let me use his old one.
All right. So now you're Tim.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else out here? We've got Sylvia Alf.
Okay, bye. Turn it off.
Okay, I think everyone is identified as far as I can tell.
You have one person named iPad 5.
And that's one that nobody seems to know what it is. No one has replied to that. Thanks, Janice.
Oh, Nancy.
Yes?
Nancy, I think that's me, Beverly Houston.
iPad 5 is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Who knows why? Yeah, that's me.
Oh, there you are.
Go figure. Okay.
What's that
Okay.
noise?
Now we're getting some feedback from somebody. Janice Beaverson is now coming in. I'll maybe wait another minute and then I'm going to start the meeting. It might be a little hard for me to monitor the waiting room as I start the meeting. Okay, well, let's start the meeting, Karen.
Okay.
Welcome to our first Prince William Wildflower Society meeting through the Zoom platform. I know everybody's getting used to using Zoom now for everything from family meetings to, you know, work. So we're finally getting on board here with PWWS. I am Nancy Beers. I'm the president of your Prince William Wildflower Society, and I'm also president of the statewide Virginia Native Plant Society. Prince William Wildflower Society is a chapter of the VNPS. We just got Janet Weedcraft to come in. Denise Rogers, okay. So, I'm gonna try to mute everyone. I don't know why I'm seeing, let's see. I thought I could do it, and now I don't see where I. How do I mute everyone, Kim? Oh, well.
Under participants, click on
Okay.
participants and see and mute all.
Okay, that's where it is. I had seen it before, and then I suddenly couldn't see it. Okay. So everybody's muted right now. If you want to speak, you can unmute yourself, or you can push on your on your space bar and use that as a microphone toggle. As long as you're pushing on the space bar, it should work. So let's see, a few announcements as my throat goes dry here. There's a chat option. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see chat in the middle. If you click on chat, you can write an email to a particular person or to everyone. So if you have questions or something, I encourage you to put your questions there. I'll be monitoring the chat box. Let's see. As for some announcements, this Monday evening, the Prince William Conservation Alliance is hosting an event at 7 o'clock entitled, "Is This Land Your Land?" Discussion around why African Americans and other people of color might not think so. Prince William Wildflower Society and a number of other organizations are all co-sponsoring this event. So you can register for this event with the Prince William Conservation Alliance, and I'll either provide a link in the chat box or Kim Hosen can do it if she likes. Let's see. Valerie Kenyon Gaffney is our treasurer, and she's going to give us a brief treasurer's report. And I need to decide whether we want to have the drawing for the raffle of the Flora Virginia book now or at the end of the meeting. Anyone dying to know? Or I think we're going to do it at the end of the meeting. Okay, Valerie?
It works.
Okay. Unmute yourself and give us the treasurer's report.
Checking account $1,464.54. Savings account, 11,926.45.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? One of our recent acquisitions is a big display board that can fold up, and we can take it to events, but we don't have any events now, but we do have a lovely display board that I'll be putting together soon. And, you know, we can update it, and I don't have to use these old science project paper boards anymore. So that was our biggest expense this year. Kim Hosen has put in the chat the web link to the This Land Is This Land Your Land event. So be sure and look for that if you are not already signed up for that. Because once you sign up, then you get the link to the Zoom event. Okay, Marian Anderson, I don't know what I'm in. Marian Lobstein and Sally Anderson are offering a class on using the Flora app. And it's going to be by Zoom. And I'm going to give the floor to Marian now, and you can tell us a little bit about that class and how to sign up. Take it away, Marian.
All right. Sally and I are excited about doing a basic introduction to the Flora of Virginia app. And we're going to do that quickly with PowerPoint slides that are screen captured, but then we are going to mirror the actual app and use it real time to involve the participants in the Zoom section in working through the graphic key. I think most of you, to start with, will want to use the app with the graphic key. It's fairly quick, intuitive, and we'll be practicing with that. We've started to have very good response. Mark Murphy is working with us. He has, through Neon, sent out email invitations to members of our chapter, Piedmont chapter, and also Potomac chapter. In about 18 hours, we already had over 40 people sign up, and we had restricted this to 50 people. Well, first 25, and then we expanded to 50. Now we're up to 90 slots, and tonight I emailed Mark, and we're close to 60, I think. So if you think you're interested, please go ahead and respond to the individual email that was sent out.
Or you can send an email to Marian. Marian, do you want to put in the chat box your email address?
Okay.
And is it free, or does it cost for members or non-members?
It is free for members, and we will record it and post it, and we hope to do additional sessions. We'll
now, if
start
someone is
out,
not a, excuse me, if someone is not a member, they can just pay $30 and be a member and join the class?
I
Is that
think
the idea?
so. I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
But I think we'll have enough slots left, and it's first come, first serve.
Yeah. And what's the date of it and the time?
It is Monday, July 13th at 10 o'clock in the morning. We're going to try to do a day session.
And how long is it?
We will keep it to less than an hour. Our presentation will be about 45 minutes, but we would like to have time for questions.
Okay.
And we do want participation. So does everyone see my email? Nancy, do you see that on the chat? MB lobstein@earthlink.net. And if you
I
have
don't
other
see it.
questions
I don't see it,
about
Marion.
the app, people have been emailing me some of those also, and I'm happy to answer those.
Okay, that's not showing up in my chat box.
All right.
You hit enter. Okay.
Okay, now is it showing up in chat boxes?
Let's see. I still don't see it.
Well,
I can get to it while we have the presentation. Okay, now the moment you all been waiting for patiently. Wait a minute, I do have one more announcement, excuse me. I'm looking for volunteers to weed out at the I-95 rest area, and I think the next time I'm going to schedule is for Thursday, 2 weeks from today, the 16th, around 8 a.m. So if anybody would be willing to help me, send me an email. You can reply to the Zoom invitation since it came out from my email address. I'll also put my email down in the chat box. Okay, so now our speaker, why we're all here. Julie Flanagan is our guest speaker tonight. She's an arborist, or the arborist, I should say, for Prince William County's Department of Public Works Watershed Management Branch. She has over 32 years of experience working first as an urban forester for Fairfax County, and then for the last 22 years as the arborist for Prince William County. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Forestry and Wildlife Management from Virginia Tech. Her work has focused on two primary responsibilities: applying landscape and tree preservation regulations to the development industry, and overseeing the successful reestablishment of forests on over 15 reforestation projects encompassing more than 60 acres and several stream restoration projects. She's Prince William County's first professional arborist on staff. Her professional credentials include being an ISA, which is the International Society of Arborists, or is that, I believe, certified arborist since 1997, and is an ISA qualified tree risk assessor since 2010. Julie is an excellent photographer. She loves Glacier National Park, and she loves to take pictures of warblers at McGee Marsh in Ohio. So tonight she's going to tell us about Reforesting the Land, Prince William County's efforts past and present. This is a look at 20 years of reforestation efforts countywide, from humble beginnings to how the Chesapeake Bay has fostered local reforestation projects, to lessons learned and a hope for a future in which private landowners can envision reestablishing forests on their own land and in their own communities. So we're going to have Julie share the screen and go from there.
All right, I'm saying share screen.
Is it allowing you to share the screen?
Host disabled participant screen sharing. So apparently I'm not enabled.
Okay, try it again.
Okay.
We practiced this on Tuesday.
There we go. There we go. We're good. All right. Let me just get to my first slide here. Oh, that's the second slide. Okay. Well, Nancy, thank you. And thank you everybody for inviting me to speak. Valerie, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. This is on the topic of reforestation. This is one of my topics, one of my work tasks that is very near and dear to my heart. I get to do various things in my job, but this is probably the thing that I find most rewarding. And I'm very happy to be presenting it to you all as the Prince William Wildflower Society, in part because you've been a part of getting native plants into my own yard. I've been to several of your native plant sales and have benefited from them greatly. And I'd have to say my favorite plant that's now in my yard and would not be if it weren't for y'all's sale is dwarf crested iris. I love that one. So, and I know from the list that Nancy was calling out earlier, there's a lot of familiar names and faces on here. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all. So in Prince William County, I'm in the watershed management branch, and we're a department in the Department of Public Works. And as Nancy mentioned, I'll give you a little more updated statistics. We've reforested on over 20 sites, 65 acres. Our smallest site was only 0.15 acres, and that was in Ben Lomond Park. And our largest to date has been 18.5 acres, which we did in 2017. 2017 at Bristow Station Heritage Park. That's a wonderful place to go walking if you live out in the Bristow area. It's a great park, great place to walk. And now we're even setting our sights on going even bigger. So I'm going to talk about what are we doing and how did we get there. So first of all, in 1998, when I was first hired as the arborist for Prince William County, prior to that, there was no arborist in Prince William County. They'd had some urban forestry people in the mosquito control group, but nobody who served in a regulatory function. We had a regional forester, some may remember Keith Hawkins with the Virginia Department of Forestry, and he served as in an advisory role. And then I was hired as a result of our then county executive, Bern Ewert. He was briefly a county executive because he was a man of direct speech, and I think that got him axed pretty quickly. But there came a day when he said he'd like to know what the county arborist thought about something that they were working on, and the answer was, we don't have a county arborist, and he said, hire one. So here I am. And that's me in 1998. It's been a while. So we get off, the reforestation in the county got off to sort of a dubious start. Kind of like this. We had a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to perform what would have been the county's first stream restoration project in I think probably came in a little bit earlier there, like 1997 or so. And it turned into sort of a comedy of errors where they gave us money to do a project, only they sent it to the wrong office. And so it sat there unbeknownst to us. We thought because we hadn't received any money that their project was not going to take place, so we didn't do anything. And then time passed and something happened which brought the whole thing back into people's attention. And by that time, the Fish and Wildlife Service didn't want to wait any longer because it takes a couple of years to get a stream restoration project engineered and then implemented, contracted, all that good stuff. So they were looking for a quick solution to help streams in the county that wouldn't take as long as a stream restoration project would. And so someone in our office says, well, hey, we just hired this arborist. Why don't we reforest those streams and give that job to Julie? So that's exactly what happened. And I was then introduced not only to my first reforestation project, but also how politics can influence things. I identified 3 projects countywide. I wanted to do larger projects, maybe like 2 or 3 acres apiece, that could have a little bit more of a substantial impact on the area in which they were put into. But then a political decision was made by my managers that each magisterial district should get its own project, which led to us going from 3 projects to 7 projects, and then shrank the size of some of those so that we could work it out. We wound up reforesting 5.6 acres over those 7 magisterial projects. And this was the first project that we ever did. And I'll give a shout out to any master gardeners that are in the audience, because they were a big help in doing this. Several of our reforestations over the years have been done with community volunteers and oftentimes with master gardener volunteers. And I know that people within the Wildflower Society have been a part of that as well. So we started with this project, which is called Little Creek. Now, to give you, see if I can use my mouse to give you some direction here. So this is off of Route 1 at the entrance to Quantico Marine Corps Base. And just to the right side of this slide is the entrance to Quantico Marine Corps Base. And so the land roughly from right along here is actually on Quantico Marine Corps Base. The land over here is owned by Prince William County. We had to buy this, I think, to put the culvert in under, to have Little Creek go through the culvert. And then over here, this road is Fuller Heights Road. This is a small site. It was about a 1/4 acre, and we're looking at the downstream portion. If you'll see the upstream, or you'll see in the direction of the upstream portion shortly here. So if you can see my list of plants, oops. We always use natives every time we're planting. We try to pick species that are applicable to the site. And in this case, because it was one of my first projects, I kind of went all out. We had everything from shrubs to understory trees, overstory trees, and herbaceous plants, and in good numbers. So we had a good task to get all those in one morning, and we did well with that. So here are some of the volunteers that came out. We had a small group of students that helped us out, and most of these volunteers were master gardeners. And I believe, Janice, you are in this audience today. Hopefully you recognize yourself right there, because that is you. And this was in 2000. You can see that we used these black mats, which are called Vispor weed mats. And the idea behind those is that they cover the ground and prevent weeds from getting through, but they will let water and rainfall filter through. We used some short tubes, these little protective 2-foot tubes, and then we also used taller 4-foot tubes for the trees, 2-foot tubes for the shrubs. And you may recognize some calorie pears here, which have been the bane of a reforester's existence. So we had about 35 feet on one side of Little Creek, and then we had a very short distance on the other side, because this is Marine Corps Base Quantico. And I will say that we did try to work with them to reforest further and get more of the stream reforested, but it did not take long to learn how very difficult it can be to work with a military base. So because I could not spend a couple of years just negotiating to get them on board, I had to abandon that idea and just go with reforesting on the county's land. And then this culvert, you're going to see pictures will be taken. The next 2 pictures are from this culvert looking downstream. So here's some progress shots. The first growing season. And then, so we don't mow. You can see that the grasses are let to grow. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. But just to give you an idea what our first project looked like, you may recognize this building if you know. I think it's called Mickey Finn's. And if you're thinking that the stream indeed goes underneath that building, yes, it does. So that was kind of an interesting scenario there. And then here's the same view in 2013 in the 14th growing season. So encouraging for your first project. And it's nice to have enough time with the county to be able to go back to these sites many years later and see how they're doing, and either be completely discouraged or rather encouraged.
Julie, we had a question about calorie pears there.
Yeah.
Were there calorie pears in that
area,
and how'd you get rid of them?
We didn't. Some of the things, there's a lot of things you have to consider when you're doing reforestation, and some of it is community appearance and people's projects and how people view the land. You see some junipers planted down here. This was actually a beautification planting that Supervisor Cadigan had installed maybe a couple years prior to us doing the reforestation. And we actually were glad to have it. I'm not so glad that there were calorie pears, but glad to have the beautification, because it acted for us like a visual barrier. One of the problems that some people can have with reforestation is that when you let it go, it gets rather brushy and weedy. And so sometimes it's good to have a situation like this where there's something in front of your reforestation that draws a person's eye, draws their attention, and they don't quite notice what the chaos or the apparent chaos that's happening behind that. So this was a beautification planting by Supervisor Cadigan. We honored that. We had no intention to disturb it. And in fact, it worked so well that a later county executive, Melissa Pecor, when we were telling her that we had planted this area, she said, where is this? I don't know where this is. And when I described it, she goes, I've never noticed it. I drive that road all the time and I've never noticed it. And I was thinking, great, that was actually one of our goals, is that it would take place without being really obvious. So we didn't do anything about that in this case, but I will talk about maintenance of invasive plants such as calorie pear a bit later. Okay. So one of the things that motivates us, or motivates me, for changing forests or for reforesting is because of how rapidly Prince William County has developed and the changes that can take place in forest cover. And so I just want to give you an example of that. I'm sure we all live in this county. We know how much it's changing, but this is the neighborhood I moved into before it developed. This is the Bristow area, and I took the lots off of it just so you could see more easily how it changed. This is Linton Hall Road here in 2000. That is the beginnings of Sudley Manor Drive, crossing Broad Run here. This is one of the early sections of Braemar subdivision, which is the subdivision I moved into. And if you were going along Linton Hall Road right now, today, you'd actually be up here because they rerouted the road. And this would be the shopping center that has the Safeway in it. So this is what it looked like in 2000. We're just going to go through these quickly and see how it changed. 2002, 2004, 2006. So massive changes. And if you see how large blocks of forest have been gobbled up by development, and impervious area and homes and businesses have replaced them. These are the number of acres that were permitted in these years to have land disturbing activity by Prince William County. So Prince William County issues the permit. The housing boom got started around 2002, 2003. So in 2003 alone, there were 3,500 acres of land disturbance permits issued. 2004, 4,800. And then in 2006, we had the start of the Great Recession. And you can see how dramatically the numbers dropped down to 1,200 acres. And then we still haven't bounced back with that, which is actually fine with me. It was chaos in 2003 and 2004. And so now we're, in last fiscal year, we had 1,100 acres. But that's still a tremendous amount of land being disturbed every year. Now, not all of that is forest land. Some of it may be fields or pastures or old farmland. Some of it may be redevelopment. So, but I would say it's safe to say that the majority of that is coming by removal of forest land. So why the Preservation Bay Act has had a big influence on our efforts, and it was enacted back in 1988, and I'll just let you read this. One of the key things that the act did was that it linked healthy economic activity and a healthy economy with water quality because of the great economic benefits there are from the Chesapeake Bay. And then it specifically, because of that link, it specifically linked land use planning and development to water quality. And that really changed how streams were viewed and how land was viewed and how regulations affected property. One of the biggest changes was that the act mandated a preservation of a 100-foot wide undisturbed buffer along all perennial streams in what is defined as tidewater. So that green map is the entire Chesapeake Bay region, but in Virginia, not all of those counties in the state were under the Chesapeake Bay Act. There was a more narrow selection of tidewater counties, and Prince William County fell into that category. So we came under the Chesapeake Bay Act. It sought to regulate the introduction or the flow of these three major pollutants, nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended sediments, into our stream waters, because they would eventually wind up into the Chesapeake Bay. And they were major reasons why the bay was suffering, and populations of fish and oysters and crabs were declining. In response to that, Virginia joined with other localities, other states, and set a goal of restoring 610 miles of forested riparian buffers. So riparian meaning these are areas that run along the edge of either of a stream. It could be an intermittent stream, could be a perennial stream. But the thinking at that time was we can improve the quality of the bay if we either maintain or preserve or recreate the natural forested buffers along these streams. And so, since a lot of those buffers had been cleared for various reasons, this goal was to reestablish forest on those buffers. And we got involved in that because of that legislation. So I want to just talk a little bit about why forests are beneficial for this purpose. And I'm going to need to, so I can read my own notes, I'm going to need to make this small. There we go. Okay. So trees remove pollutants in a variety of ways. I'm just going to give a really quick overview of what they do. One of the things they do is act like scrubbers, actually intercepting particulate air pollution with their leaves. And they have a very huge, mature tree has a huge surface area of leaf surface area. So that allows those pollutants to get stuck on those leaves, and then rainfall carries it down in the washing off of those leaves down into the soil. And in the soil, it can then be consumed by microorganisms who will use that to do their business down in the soil. Also, the trees intercept rainfall on the leaves and branches and trunks so that the rainfall hits those surfaces first and begins to coat them. And that slows the progress of the rainfall down to the ground and eliminates also the force of the impact of water droplets. You've probably seen at some point a water droplet coming down and hitting a puddle or something like that. And you typically see this kind of miniature violent splash with a lot of the sediments getting caught up in that rainwater so that you have a muddy puddle. Well, that's what forests help prevent, both from the leaves and the branches and the trunk, but also, and I don't mention it here, but also the leaf litter. Those are all really huge benefits of forests. And then the roots themselves will create pore space within the stormwater, within the soil for stormwater to flow down into that area rather than running off the surface. They increase the volume of water that the soil can hold. They uptake water and nutrients into their structures. So those pollutants that go into the soil, part of their job is to take those back out of the soil and build them into their own structure. And they hold the soil in place by reducing erosion with their fine root hairs that are in the top 6 to 8 inches of soil. They also foster a very rich microbial life in the soil itself. And those microbes are part of a very important part of processing pollutants that enter into the soil by rainwater. And then for streams, they do a great job of shading, and shading is very important because it increases the dissolved oxygen levels, which helps to increase the number of aquatic organisms and balance out the stream food web, including the removal of pollutants from streams. So we had some early Chesapeake Bay efforts, and I'm just going to show you one of them. This is a place called Meadows at Barnes Crossing. And before, it was in 2009 in February when we were considering doing this. You can see the perennial stream. This actually does have a Chesapeake Bay RPA on it because it is a perennial stream. So there would be a 100-foot buffer back over this way and a 100-foot buffer on the other side, including that driveway. And at the time it was just finishing up. The farmer had sold it to Miller and Smith developers, and they were going to take this RPA and dedicate it to the parks. And so we stepped in and said, well, we'd like to get a jump on this before the houses come in. You're going to see houses pop up here in another image shortly. And before those houses come in, we'd really like to be able to get the plants in place. Again, thinking about the public's view of somehow these things might look, we thought it would be more successful if we could get the plants in place and then the homes were built. And so thankfully, Steve Aylor, who was with Miller and Smith, he was very cooperative and great to work with. And he allowed us to go in while they were still on bond, while they were still the owners of that land before they had dedicated it. And he allowed us to plant that 1.54 acres, not a huge area, but this is what it looked like in May, shortly after being planted. Again, the stream is running down through this area and going, this is the flow of it down through that area. And so that's 2009. This is the 5th growing season in 2013. I should mention that we could not plant any area in here because there is a sanitary sewer line that runs right down through there, and that's fairly common along stream valleys and stream edges, is that you have sanitary lines. And so because the sanitary sewer authorities that run those have easements that allow them to remove any kind of undesirable vegetation at any time that they want, because of that, we simply don't plant on them. We think it would be a waste of money to have you put in trees and then have the easement holder take them back out. So there's a gap there. So this was the 5th growing season. And then this is in July 2019, the 11th growing season. And what you're seeing is canopy closure. That's an important stage where shade begins to become a very strong feature of the site. It dramatically changes the character of the reforestation. And you're also seeing autumn olive over here. Somebody might have recognized that silvery gray color and a small few autumn olives in there. This site actually had relatively little invasive plants come into it, so didn't do a lot of maintenance out here. But on cases like this, we do have, in most years, not this year, but in most years, we have summer interns. And one of the hot, sweaty, dirty, buggy tasks that we give them is to go out to these sites and do basic maintenance, such as removing invasive plants, taking off tubes that have the plants have outgrown, removing the bird nets and things like that. And then this was also funded partly through the Virginia Department of Forestry's Virginia Trees for Clean Water program. They had a 50-50 grant and they helped us fund that. We don't only do reforestations because of Chesapeake Bay. We also do them for other reasons, and this is one of those reasons. You're looking at an aerial image. I know this is a very busy image, but just to give you some, if you know where you are, this is Prince William Parkway coming up through here, and this is Route 28. So Manassas is off to the right here, and you go down this way, you get toward Nooksville after several miles. And this is the Innovation Park, and the blue outline here gives you the outline of what was at that point Innovation Park, which is a Prince William County owned, went into kind of a partnership with private landowners to help develop this as a corporate campus park. That was the idea behind it. You may know, I keep using my mouse. Where is it? There it is. That's the, oops, sorry, that's the target. There we go. That's the target business there. And what we needed to do, because Prince William County was, in essence, acting like a developer in this site, we were going to disturb wetlands and develop those wetlands along with the private people that were buying these properties and developing them privately. So these pink areas represent existing wetlands that were going to get disturbed as a result of the development. And the Corps of Engineers requires that we mitigate that. You can do it a couple different ways. One was through preservation, and these orange areas represent areas that were to be preserved. This purple area represents a very large wetland on what's called Broad Run Island, which was created as a mitigation measure. And then the yellow areas are areas that we reforested to supplement the existing, mostly around existing wetlands or stream corridors. So we're going to take a little closer look at this area right here. next to the shopping center. There's a big retaining wall that runs along the edge. And then this is Broad Run that runs, and it takes a real sharp turn there, goes under 28 over here. And that is the Broad Run overflow, which is actually a secondary channel. But this is all RPA, and so we wound up reforesting that. Now, I will say, overall in Innovation, we did about a little over 12 acres of reforestation, and I will say that Innovation has so far, to this day, been the most difficult area to reforest. The soils there are terrible. It was farmed for a long time, grazed, cropped, and then the last thing that happened before it got developed was that it was a sod farm, which means that you're stripping off the topsoil again and again and again. And that is certainly what we ran into. We had some sites where we had almost 100% mortality, and one site that was thankfully small where we actually brought in mulch, laid it out about a foot thick, came back 8 months later and then planted so that we could get some survival, because we had to have a certain survival rate in order to meet the Corps of Engineers wetland mitigation standards. So here's our contractor putting 1 gallon trees out. We normally don't use 1 gallon trees. Occasionally we do. He actually was contracted to do tubulings, but oftentimes the contractors, if they can't get the tubulings, they'll bring out 1 gallon stock. So sometimes you get bigger material than you thought you were going to have. So here's a similar area. This is that retaining wall on the shopping center side. This was all mowed, and these are pots sitting out waiting to be planted in 2009. And then you can see, even though this is the 6th growing season, and by this time normally on most sites, we would see a fair amount of canopy closure, something that looks like you're at least getting close to canopy closure. And in this case, it's just didn't work. And actually, this was actually the 2nd planting that we did out there. We had enough survival to satisfy the Corps, but the trees are growing very slowly. And I think if we went out there today and looked over that retaining wall, you still wouldn't see a full canopy closure out there, even, would that be 11 years later? But in 2010, major changes took place. So by that time, the Bay efforts had been going on for 25 years, and reports were that the Bay had really not significantly improved. So everything was looked at again, and you could go into a tremendous amount of detail about the length of things that were looked at and the breadth of it all. But suffice it to say that the past efforts focused on stormwater regulations, primarily the use of stormwater management ponds, in order to remove nutrients from runoff, stormwater runoff on the land. But the new thinking was that we needed to take a broader approach. We needed to look at a broader range of influences on water quality and support those. So the idea of getting stormwater to infiltrate the land where that rainfall falls gained prominence and more importance than ever. And so in 2010, new goals were established for all the Bay jurisdictions for cleaning the Bay. EPA took the lead on that, and they established what was called TMDLs. So TMDLs stands for Total Maximum Daily Load. That's one of those acronyms which, if you first look at it, you probably think it makes no sense to me. But what it is, it's basically setting a budget. The idea is we have to reduce the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids entering our streams. There was a baseline that was modeled and determined that here you are, this is your baseline of what you have currently. Excuse me. And you need to reduce your stormwater, you need to reduce those pollutants from that baseline. So jurisdictions had to show how they were going to actually reduce the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids. We had to come up with a plan for that. And the broader approach led to people looking at things such as reducing what fertilizers are applied to lawns. And you may be aware that now if you were to go to buy fertilizers in a store, to some degree, your fertilizers no longer contain phosphorus. That was one of the things that changed to try and remove the amount of phosphorus entering streams, is that people were over-applying phosphorus and it was getting into our streams. Retrofitting ponds. So A lot of ponds were built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and they didn't have a very great efficiency at removing these pollutants. They were mainly more geared toward just slowing the volume of water and how quickly it entered a stream, but they didn't concentrate on removing these pollutants. So that changed. And now there's a large effort to retrofit ponds and make them more efficient at removing pollutants. Repairing damaged streams. You might want to have somebody do if they haven't already, a talk on damaged streams and stream restoration projects. And that's a huge factor in the amount of pollutants that are washing through a stream system, much higher than is normal because of high impervious areas creating much more flow through our stream channels, picking up sediments and washing them downstream and ultimately into the bay. And then also, and this was the one that gets to what I do, changing the landforms. For example, reforestation. Changing the land from turf to trees, or better still, if you had an impervious area and you could change that into a tree to forested area, that would be great. Or the removal of impervious surfaces, even if you're just going from impervious to, say, lawn, all those would be considered benefits and a change in the land form. So that was good news for forests. There were mandated pollution reductions for 2017 and then by 2025. And we met our 2017 ones, and now we're well on our way to meeting the 2025 reductions. Pollution reduction credits for forest make it practical financially, so we can show that we can spend money on this and make, although they're small compared to a stream restorations get huge credits toward reducing pollutants. Forests get relatively small credits, but we'll talk about that still, that makes them desirable. We found a lot of willing partners, and they weren't hard to find, with parks, homeowner associations, and county land that isn't parks. And then there's also increased funding sources through things like the Virginia Department of Forestry, something called SLOF, the State and Local Assistance Fund, which funds a lot of our stream restorations, and also has now funded one of our reforestation projects. And in a small way, these new regulations made it more desirable for people to preserve land, although I will say that has not had the impact that I was hoping it would have, and I think many others. There's still a great amount of pressure to clear the land and build rather than see it as a benefit see retaining forests as a benefit for the bay and for local streams as well. So I have goals in reforesting. Indeed, I do. And I would love, wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could recreate a forest like this? I see old photos of ancient forests, and I just want to go walk right into that image and enjoy and wonder at things that we really can't even imagine today, because none of us have lived at a time when these forests were commonplace, where you could go down your road and see it, or maybe even take a short day trip and go walk into one of these forests. So I don't know that what we're doing would ever lead to something like this, although I certainly would love to see that happen. But we have perhaps, hopefully, more realistic goals. So my goals are to foster a ecological health as best we can by reintroducing native plant communities that can then, in that process of establishing themselves, improve the health of streams, improve wildlife habitat, and improve the soils that are part of that forest ecosystem. And we're looking not for short-term, when I look for a site to forest, I will bypass something quickly if I think it's only going to be there for 10 years or even 20 years. I want 40 years. I want 50 years. I want those forests to be there long after I'm gone. So we try to select sites that we have some reasonable assurance that those will be long-term efforts. And then education is really important, and so one of our goals is to help educate people about the value of forests, the structure of forests, and why it's so good that we could reestablish them. So when we talk about reestablishing a forest, there's 5 basic layers: the overstory, the understory, the shrub layer, and the herbaceous layer and the leaf litter layer. Now, when we're doing a reforestation, we really don't even try to do all of those. In most cases, we'll do primarily the overstory and understory. We always put the trees in because those are the big pieces. They're the most influential pieces. So we always put the overstory and the understory in. And depending upon the site, we may put shrubs in. We may plant some herbaceous plants. And then the leaf litter, we simply rely on the vast majority of the time. We rely on that coming in as a natural process of the reforestation. As that canopy closes, as the trees get large enough and they drop their leaves and they begin to smother the grasses that have been growing there up until that point, then that leaf litter layer begins to form. And that's one reason why it's important that we tell people not to mow. So all of these things can take place. Excuse me, my priorities and site selection partly has to do with trying to reduce the amount of fragmentation that we experience. So fragmentation is simply big chunks of forest becoming smaller. And we saw that in my first example. But here's just an example from the Dominion Valley area where large block of forest like this gets chopped up and becomes narrow strips. Why is that a problem? It increases what's called the edge to interior ratio. The idea behind that is that when you have, there are elements of that, of an ecosystem, of forest ecosystem, that survive and do well when you have a large block of forest. I'll give you a couple examples. The ovenbird is a native bird to our area, and it will only breed in a larger block of forest that has a fairly mature canopy to it and enough space that it is safe for it to and can reproduce. And same with something like the wood thrush or the scarlet tanager. These are all birds that are disappearing from our area because these forests are being chopped into smaller and smaller pieces. So agriculture could do that. In this case, this is before Dominion Valley was built, and it's already fragmented because of the fields and the agricultural use. But then obviously when you come in, you can see that development fragments it even more. So one of the things I look for as a priority is there existing forest that I can build onto? And that's not always going to be the case, but it is one of my highest priorities. Also, are there riparian corridors? We still put an emphasis on riparian corridors, whether they're perennial or intermittent. Is it within a 100-year floodplain? A lot of flood waters are cleaned by those forests. So if we can get that forest reestablished, it helps clean those waters. And now, because of the TMDL, we're also looking at uplands. So we're not limiting ourselves any longer to the riparian corridors. We're also looking at the upland areas. And does this land have some protection that's already on it? Either a deed restriction or some other legal restriction that helps give us a degree of comfort that we're not going to have that area disturbed in 10 or 20 years. So the Chesapeake Bay RPAs are a legal restriction, and so it's fairly easy to go onto those properties because they already have the RPA protecting them. And I'll give you an example of, so this is actually an example from Veterans Park of how some of those factors came in. Veterans Park we actually chose because it was part of that initial U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service project that went kind of dubious. But it also is a good example of the site selection. Now, it's not a stream, it's a man-made pond. And for that reason, I frankly was not at all certain that this was going to be a good project. It was actually when we had our final list, we had a hard time finding something in the Woodbridge district. And this was, I thought, going to be the real dog of the group. But it turned out to be a bit of a gem. And so it has connection. So you may recognize this is Occoquan Bay National Wildlife Refuge, and that's got very close proximity to this park. This is Marumsco Creek coming up in here. So you have a stream corridor that goes through that. And Marumsco Creek throughout this area is wooded. It's not a huge area, but it is wooded. And one of the things that's characteristic of it is that the migratory bird, the Prothonotary warbler, which some of you may be familiar with, Nancy mentioned I like warblers, indeed I do. the prothonotary warbler migrates to our area and breeds along this shoreline because it's slow-moving water, which they like, and there's available cavities, and there's abundant insects. And so this is one of the places where they will come and breed in our area. So this is what the pond looked like prior, this I think is March of 2000, and it's wintertime. So the population of birds consists of Canada geese and gulls. One good thing about them is they made that land very fertile. So when we did finally plant, there was, those plants took off, and you're gonna see that. But this is what it looked like before. I think I've got this bench here in another photo, but keeping this little sweep of the land here, keep that in mind. You'll see a picture of this, which is a far shoreline that has some sloughing of the bank, and then you immediately have a short area of green space and into a parking lot. So here's from the other edge. Now, that other picture was taken back from over here, looking toward where I'm standing now. And here you see those trees I talked about that are along Marumsco Creek, mature stand of hardwood forests, and our friends the geese and gulls. That's the Sloughing Creek. And so those are some of the things that we were trying to fix, to bring in a riparian system and fix that. And I know Kim is in this audience, and she may remember the day we did this where we had 100 volunteers and we had so many plants, we had over 1,000 plants we were putting in, and we didn't quite get it done, but it was good nonetheless. So here's what it looked like right when it was completed in the summer of 2000. We used tubes and bird netting, and you'll see also that we planted shrubs. In this case, I was still kind of early on. I still use shrubs a lot. I don't use them quite as much anymore, but we put quite a few shrubs out here. And in this case, they did not get overwhelmed by deer browse. They actually had good survival. And so that's in 2000. Now we're going to have more or less the same view in 2008. This area here, where am I? Is behind on the closed canopy because we had a little fire that burned that area, but that just made it more diverse. And then a couple weeks ago, June 2020. So it looks like a mature forest. You can walk in underneath it. Some of the trees there right now, the silver maples, are about 12 to 14 inches in diameter in 20 years. And so that's it's pretty interesting. And bird life, before, instead of we had the seagulls and the Canada geese when I was out there last week or the week before, we had downy woodpecker, northern flicker, I've seen orchard oriole out there, green heron, and probably best of all, the prothonotary warbler. I was out there one year, some years ago, and a prothonotary warbler was actually nesting in a nest box that was placed out there and feeding their young. I watched them for 2 hours as they had their young were just out of the nest. They were hanging out in a nearby tree, and the parents was there actually about 2 or 3 hours. And the entire time I watched them, the parents flew from those edge trees down into the reforestation within a matter of 1 minute to 2 minutes, found a caterpillar, found a bug, a spider, and took it back to feed their young. And I can tell you that that is like one of the highlights of my work, is to know that we created a habitat where a bird like the prothonotary warbler could make its home and successfully fledge young. All right, and then here's that sloughing bank. That's what it looks like today or a week ago. I couldn't even get down there because it was so thick with vegetation. So what are our methods? When I pick plant types or choose plant types, primarily we're doing the overstory and understory trees, as I mentioned, and then shrubs and herbaceous plants are optional, and we determine that on a case-by-case basis. Species selection is usually done by simply walking around the area and seeing what's already growing there. If there's forest nearby that's of similar habitat, what are those species? Make note of those, develop a plant list from those species, but ultimately, when you go to a contractor, and a lot of our stuff, because they're larger plantings, are done by contractors, you give them the list and then they get back to you and say, hey, I couldn't find any more black gum. There's just not available. Can I substitute sweet gum or something along those lines? And so you have to be flexible with that, and we are. We do some initial watering if we can, but that's dependent upon the site. Big sites, we basically try to time the planting and have rain, pray for rain. And I do. I go out there and I pray for rain. I watch the news and I watch the storm clouds come through on the weather channel or weather app to see if they're hitting the areas that I've planted. And then we stop mowing, which allows the native plants to seed naturally into the area and boosts our stems per acre, which can speed up the rate at which that canopy closes. And that's, like I said, a kind of a turning point or a marker within the plant community. Working with the HOAs, we really have to work with education. It's vital. A lot of people are afraid of how these areas are going to look. They're afraid of tall grass. They're afraid of snakes. They're either afraid or they just don't want bunnies, which is, I find that a little bit comical. But you're a gardener, y'all are gardeners, you know, the rabbits can get in and eat your stuff, and they think that these reforestation areas are going to increase the amount of rabbits. And then there's the rats or mice or whatever. And so we have to do the education component of helping people understand that you're hopefully restoring a system, which will, if it's a good functioning system, you'll have the snakes that eat the mice. And that the rabbits would rather be in a natural area that has better food sources for them than they do want to be in your lawn. So that's important though, and that's a big part of what we talk about. And then we provide options for those HOAs to make it more palatable for them to take part. If they don't want us to use tubes, we'll work on a design which doesn't use tubes. And that can affect, however, the density at which we plant, and it can also affect the expense of the project. So in some ways it might affect it in a good way, the expense, or it might make it more expensive if we have to put more plants in because we're not using the protective tubes. And that's often what we do. If we don't use tubes, they protect the trees from deer browse, and that helps keep the mortality rate low. If we take off the tubes, we expect that we're going to get a higher rate of mortality from deer browse, and so we increase the density, or we'll use a taller tree. In either way, that increases the expense. So those are options that we think through and we talk through with the HOA before we decide on an ultimate plan. These are the kinds of stock that we use. On rare occasion, we use bare root. I'm not a huge fan of bare root, but we have used it in a small way. These are what are called container tublings. These are 3 by 3 inches at the top and about 9 inches deep. And they're really good for reforestation. They're one of the most inexpensive ways to go. If the tublings aren't available, our contractor will often go with gallon stock. And oftentimes if they go with gallon stock and we've contracted for tublings, they're not able to charge us more. So we can get a benefit by having a larger plant and they get the same cost. And this is one of my favorite folks. This is a mom and her 4 sons that came out as volunteers to help us plant at Ben Lomond Park. And they're showing you what the whipstock is like. The whipstock, is called a whip because it's usually, these are fairly branched, but oftentimes it's a tall tree about 4, 5, 6 feet in height, but it has very little branching to it. And so it looks kind of like a whip. And that's where the term whipstock comes from. That's the most expensive form of plant that we would use, and we do occasionally use it, however. So Hunter Ridge is an example of a place where we planted after those TMDL regulations came into place, and this is an upland, so it was not riparian, although a half part of it was riparian. So 10.64 acres altogether, and 0.85 of that was in an upland area. 4.79 was in a riparian area. They were separated from each other in this subdivision. These are some of the volunteers. It was a Girl Scout troop that helped us put the upland plants in. And then the rest of the work was done by a contractor. And that was telling me I was supposed to put an aerial image in here, and I didn't. But here's what it looked like. This is the upland area on top before planting in February 2016. That house right there with the white sides on it is that house right there. So you can see in this lower picture, which is from July 2019, that's the 4th growing season. So we haven't had a whole lot of time elapse on this, but maybe you can notice something, and this is what you just got to deal with, that there's a lot of tubes here with not a whole lot coming out of them. Here's a tube where the top of the tree is just coming out of the top of the tube. Same thing here, top just barely coming out. But then you see these taller trees all back. And as you get further to the right here, the trees get taller. And as you go further to the left, most of those trees are small. Well, the reason for that is this bare soil here. The developer, I'll leave them nameless, had some spare dirt that they wanted to get rid of. And this used to be a horse farm. So you can imagine it was probably pretty fertile soil. But they had some clay that they wanted to get rid of, and they spread it out within this area that became a future conservation area. There was horse farm, there were no trees there before, we couldn't stop them from spreading it there, but they did. And so we planted into an area that had that fill in it, right through here. And then that also kind of came over to in this area. It was a fairly large area. And then down from that on both sides, down here on the one side and down here on the other side, it was the natural horse pasture without any fill on it. And you go out there today and you will definitely see the differences between that those are bee horizon soils, basically mineral, not much, no organic, and not really good structure to them. And so you see the trees struggling in here, whereas where you had the old pasture land, the trees are taking off much more easily. So how are these things doing with productivity for TMDLs and cost bang for the buck? Hey, Nancy, could you holler at me when I'm like 10 minutes from where I should wrap up?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Get my mic and get my, there we go. So this is the cost per pound for phosphorus reduction in projects that we've done from 2014 to present. Stream restoration is the cheapest. Now, let's just look at these numbers in gross first, and then we'll kind of take a quick look at it. So a stream restoration project, it costs $15,000 roughly to remove 1 pound of phosphorus from our streams. And hopefully that is sinking in, as that's a lot of money. Reforestation costs $22,000 to remove 1 pound of phosphorus from our streams. And then the pond retrofits, $26,000 per pound. So from a forest standpoint, this is really good news in the sense that these are our 3 main tools: stream restoration, reforestation, and pond retrofits. These are the 3 main tools that we use to clean our streams. And reforestation comes in second place in the bang for the buck of the cost that it is to reduce that phosphorus. Now, here's just another, I don't have this on paper anywhere for you guys to look at, but the EPA estimates that across all the jurisdictions in the Bay combined, that there's a need to reduce phosphorus by 4 million pounds each year. All right. And nitrogen, there's a need to reduce the amount of nitrogen entering our streams by 61 million pounds of nitrogen per year. That's what we're trying to, all these jurisdictions together are trying to shrink that amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids by that much poundage per year in order to meet these goals. And if it costs us here $15,000 for 1 pound of phosphorus, and then across the entire Bay region, that huge map that you saw earlier that encompassed New York and Pennsylvania and all those other places, think about how expensive that is. So the expense of it's the bad news. But the good news is that reforestation is right in there in the running as the second most effective way to reach these goals. I think I'm going to move more quickly here.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to wrap up kind of quickly. People do have some questions that they put into the chat.
Okay, so one of the things we're doing recently, I'll try to wrap up in about 5 minutes, Nancy, is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. One of the things we've done is we're trying to blend reforestation and meadows to sort of improve the transition from the early successional grassy areas into native forest. Innovation Park is one place we're doing that. We had to bring in dirt because there wasn't enough soil on the ground to actually plant trees into. This is our contractor. We killed a lot of stuff in the process to do this. We brought in over 2,700 trees. And this is now that here the trees are planted all around. This is 6 acres around this pond. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring this to your attention is that this is county-owned land. We're going to put an observation platform along. We'll see where it's going to go, but this is a fairly good birding spot, and some people on here may have birded there. Well, we did a lot of killing before we planted, and so now it's got the trees in there. It's been seeded for the meadow. This is a streetscape that was part of the design. Put some signage up, and this is last month, with all these little dark spots are the trees that are baby trees coming in and trying to make a go for it. These little white markers here are where an observation platform is going to be put in to view wildlife. And so I'm going to skip over that. That's Central District. So a weakness, if there's a variety of weaknesses, but I'll just mention one. We're putting in the big woody plants. And the question is, are the herbaceous plants coming in? And for the most part, we're not really seeing that in any kind of substantial way, even 20 years after the reforestation. And when I went back to Cloverdale, which was a 20-year-old reforestation, there was a lot of shrub regeneration, volunteering itself. But in terms of herbaceous plants, I did find something I was going to put up here and ask you guys to ID it, but I didn't have time to put it in. But there was a Christmas fern. And I was really happy to see that. It was just one fern, but that's a weakness, I think, is how do we get those herbaceous layer in there? What might the future hold? So we recognize that in the development area in Prince William County, we're not stopping, or we're barely affecting the removal of forests. But at the same time, in the rural area, there's development taking place where farmland is converting to 10-acre lots. And oftentimes those 10-acre lots were previously pasture or cropland. So we've got new homeowners on large lots, which have these huge now, what are in essence lawn areas. And what can we do about that? So what we're doing is we're doing sort of a pilot project where we're partnering with the Soil and Water Conservation District. And what they have is called an Ag Share program. It's funded by the state, and it has money that's available to landowners who want to take recently converted agricultural land and reforest it. And what we're thinking is that we'd like to do that in aggregate. So this is all very tentative, and this part, I just bring this parcel up as an example. It's not anything we're actually even pursuing. It's just something I pulled off in 2 minutes from County Mapper to just give you an example. So this is an old pasture in the rural area, and it has been subdivided into these 10-acre lots. It's very open. And now, then this is Slate Run running down through here, and the Chesapeake Bay RPA associated with it. Well, people move into that area. They start building their houses and moving in here. And then what are they doing with that extra land? Well, in large measure, they're just letting it go, and they're getting tired of mowing it. So but in our day and age, because of things like the calorie pear and autumn olive and various invasives, Japanese stiltgrass that come in to these areas, it's no longer safe to just let an area naturally reforest. It's actually quite beneficial to come in and direct it, to give it the species that you want it to have, so that you can get a healthier forest established. So look at this. This is about a 16-acre area across, 6 or 7 lots. That 16 acres is, and this is just one example, we've been looking at some other sites where we could even do 60 acres in one neighborhood if we could get, and this is a huge if if these homeowners would be interested in aggregating together and saying, yes, we are interested in taking our extremely long backyard and putting some forest back onto it. So we're just getting in the very first steps of working with one particular community to see if they might be interested in doing this. And we're very hopeful about that. So I believe that was the end. Yep, that was the end.
Well, thank you, Julie. I'm going to look through the chat here and ask you some of the questions that have come up.
Okay.
Yes, let's all give her a hand. Thank you, Julie. Janice Stone had asked about the total acreage for Prince William County, and she then answered her own question with 222,720 acres. And so she calculated that in the early 2000s, we were seeing 1% of the county being developed, you know, or being lost.
Yeah.
So would you agree with that? Yeah, each year.
I'm not sure how that calculates over a longer period of time, but it wouldn't be too surprising. I came up with more 243,000. It's 380 square miles. And at 640 acres per square mile, that's 243,000 acres. I don't know if that's accurate, but it doesn't sound unreasonable to me.
Jeannie Endricott asked, how did you improve the ponds themselves?
How do we improve the ponds for the BMP retrofits? You think that's the question?
I believe so. Jeannie wants to.
Yes, that's it. I want to know what they do to retrofit the ponds.
So mostly what they do is convert them from either a dry pond, and a dry pond is where stormwater flows in, it stays for a short period of time, 24 to 48 hours, and then it flows back out again. And in between those storm events, you've got basically dry ground. What they've done in many cases is they'll create what's called an enhanced extended detention pond, where they create a sort of a meander within the pond. And that meander contains usually wetland plants. So there becomes, instead of a dry pond, there becomes a wetland component with permanent water level, where wetland plants are put in that, and the water is then more slowly routes through that pond, and as you have the plants to help take up those nutrients and reduce the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and solids before it leaves. That's the main thing that's done to improve them.
Thank you.
Okay, Rekha has a couple of questions here. If you plant only canopy and understory trees, do the shrubs and herbaceous plants show up on their own? Do non-native shrubs show up as well? I think you sort of answered that's a real problem, that you're not getting enough of that, right?
Well, with the
shrubs,
woody
but not the
plants,
herbaceous.
right, with the woody plants, we are getting invasion of both native and non-native woody plants. I would say overall the natives are winning, but on the herbaceous layer, we're not seeing a lot of the herbaceous layer come in.
And then she also asks, are the N and P amounts in pounds for the entire county? The nitrogen and phosphorus amounts?
The ones that I gave you before were for the entire Chesapeake Bay region.
Okay.
So all the states, all the Pennsylvania, New York, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and DC.
Yeah. And Cher has asked, is there ever money set aside in the county budget to preserve woodland rather than clear cut and develop them? For example, there are currently 17 acres of mostly wooded area for sale along Burwell Road in Nokesville.
To my knowledge, yes. I mean, if you were to look at something like Dove's Landing, you would say that, yeah, that's an area that has been preserved, it's forested, it's been turned into basically a passive recreational park. And I think that's a relatively recent, I'd have to say it's a relatively recent concept that the county's beginning to adopt. It's not by any means a commonplace thing, but it is something that we've done in more recent years.
Yeah. Denise Rogers asks, does remote sensing play a role in your reforestation efforts?
In the sense that we use County Mapper a lot, which is a GIS application that has layers of information on it, I sometimes have the luxury of sitting at my desk and just using County Mapper to look at different places in the county and see whether or not I think they might work. Actually, Bristow Station, which is our largest reforestation to date at 18.5 acres, came about by just doing that very thing, tooling around and saying, I wonder if this could work. And then I had the idea that we'd do like 2 acres of reforestation there. When I contacted them, it turned out that they had a whole lot more acreage that they were willing to reforest than I thought might work. So that was actually a big GIS remote sensing kind of a tool that we used, yes.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask?
I would like to give a big shout out to all the work that's been done. I did some of the work down, as you showed, down near Quantico in a Veterans Park, and I went there like 15 years afterwards and literally could not find where we had done the work because it was so overgrown. So awesome. And the planning we did down at Silver Lake last year in the fall is, I went out there, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, and all the tubes, with the exception of maybe one, have a green growth in them. They're doing fine. The ones we planted along the route are all popping out. It's like amazing stuff.
It's really encouraging. And that is probably one of the most rewarding things is you put something in place, your hands have gotten dirty, you've stuck those trees in the ground, and then you go back 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years later, and you really enjoy seeing that progress.
I did happen to notice that at least on one of the tubes, it seemed like the leaves were far down in the tube and there was an insect infestation going on because there was so much humidity in there. Is it advisable in those circumstances to remove the tube or just let nature take its course?
I would advise let nature take its course. Removing the tube before the tree is tall enough to be above the deer browse line will probably subject it to deer browse. So it's like you're kind of maybe caught between, is the insect going to be significant enough that it's going to do the tree in, or if I remove it, the deer are more likely to do the tree in. That's kind of the choice you have to make.
Well, we have a lot of compliments to you, Julie, on the chat, thanking you for your very informative presentation. Does anyone else have any last minutes? Let's all give her a hand, whether you have your speaker on or not.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
Oh, and I just, somebody, actually Valerie asked that I talk about what you could do. So this doesn't have to be on big acreage. If you have any kind of land at all, you can probably do reforestation on your land, and it might be a smaller scale, but you could do it. So consider that for your property, whether or not you can bring in those layers that we were talking about and help create forest either on your land or even in your community. If you have a HOA that you think you might have some areas that would be good for reforesting, let us know about it. We would work with you. If it might not be a project we would do, but we could work with you to facilitate that.
Thank you. Okay, now, Valerie, would you like to draw for the Flora of Virginia?
Sure. Am I correct that we have 2 books?
Yes.
My salad spinner.
And the winners are?
I wanted to get Eleanor Rigby to pull these, but I can't find her. So,
Eleanor Rigby is her kitty.
my beloved.
She waits by the window.
God, she just walked in the room.
Yay!
Woohoo! Daryl Bush something or other, 8038 Connor Drive, Boston, Virginia.
Oh my. Okay, we'll just have to get in contact with him.
I do. I have a legible phone number and an
email.
Yeah, I think it's fcberry@gmail.com.
Okay. All righty. That's our winner. And the second winner?
What do you think, Eleanor Rigby?
Yeah.
Oh, she just yawned. She finds it boring. Woohoo! Look at this one. Can you see it?
Claudia Thompson Deal. Whoa.
And she was one of those who mailed in her check. So,
okay.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So there you go. We'll figure out a way to get the book to you, Claudia.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Congratulations.
I'm glad you joined us today. So thank you all for joining us. This was a wonderful time. It's great to see so many faces and new faces, in fact. So our next meeting will be in September, and we're going to have an artist. I can't remember her name right now, but she's going to show her artwork to us. Marion, do you know her name?
Elena.
Elena.
Yes. I should know her name. I have taken classes with. She's great.
She's great.
She's really
and
great.
she lives in Front Royal, and
yes,
we'll probably have to do this by Zoom, but it works very well. Nobody has to drive.
I think it's NASA, but she does a great job. So that'll be a good program.
Borkland.
Pardon?
Elena Mazda Borkland.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Mm-hmm. Okay, if there are no further questions, we thank Julie again very much, and I thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Recorded this, we'll see how
Thanks,
that works
Julie.
out. Thank you all. Bye.
Claudia, could I have your phone number, or could you email me, please?
Or you have that in her membership list.
Yep, thank you. Okay, got it.
You got
Happy
it?
4th of July, everybody.
Okay. Bye. Happy Independence Day.
Bye.
Stay safe.
I hope to see some of you at the Zoom meeting on the 13th.
Right.
So, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks to Julie.